Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Starting from Scratch. So you can see that we've played nearly twice the amount of games that we have last time, and we have reached our first real plateau, right? We're stuck pretty consistently on floor 8 if we're using that as our metric. We're stuck pretty consistently at 1200 if we're using that as our metric. Cool. Now we know. I was a little surprised, right? I thought this was going to be 1250 to maybe 1300, because when we left off last time, it was right here is the cutoff, right? So you can see it was just like wins against all of these different players, and at least as far as like our rating change goes, we were on a hot streak, right? But it turns out that's all it was. This was just a little win streak. We were cruising, but that's over now. And we have changed by a grand total of 3 expected rating since then. So there you go. Little surprised that it wasn't a slight bit higher, but not surprised that we have run into our plateau after 150 games. That is what I was expecting and what I wanted, because I want to talk about what I want to do about it now. So, what are we going to do about this? Well, we're going to keep improving. That's it. So what I would argue that while I haven't improved here, and this is the big thing I want to talk about shortly, or very quickly here, I have improved in other ways. So I could probably, for example, start throwing the fireballs, and every time that the succubus is behind somebody, I could teleport behind them, and I would mix them up. I could probably do that 6 times in a row at 1200 rating. I would beat all those players. I would skyrocket up to like 1250, maybe even 1300 before that became a problem. And the problem would be, I bet that's really punishable, and I bet if somebody sees it coming, they can react to it and destroy me. So I could be trying to win, but I think that trying to win would hurt me very quickly afterwards, right? I think that by the time we got to an average player, we would already be in trouble here. And to be fair, I don't know everything that's going to beat an average player, but I can make some good educated guesses, and that's one of them. The teleport has a lot of recovery. They would smoke me for this, even as an average player. Once I represent this option, they would smoke me consistently, or at least they would be beating me more often than I'm beating them, which makes it bad for me. So, how have we improved them? Well, this again. This is going to be the last time for a little while that we iterate this, because I will, with this one, I believe, finally have gotten myself to a direction where the whole game plan gives me an idea of what I want to do. I will go in that direction, and it will speak for itself. If the direction that I am working in is correct, we will do better, and if it isn't, then we will do worse. So, what are the changes here? We'll come back to neutral. It's the most complicated one. It's kind of a lot of the reason why I feel like it's been taking so long to improve. And I've learned some basic things. What I have been doing is still trying to check out my game plan. I have this up. I check this between matches sometimes. You really have to just keep beating this in. It takes a while. It's fine that it takes a while, but it does. And I've been trying to answer some questions like, what does this mean? Right? Like, I know that's what I should probably be doing, but how do I do it? Why am I doing it? Where are the situations that are good and bad and whatever, right? This one's complicated. So, let's start with the easy one. Start with offense. So, I have found a standard counter hit 6p combo. It turns out it's the same combo I use on everything. It's just 6p into S Fireball. On hits and counter hits, it tends to let me get Stain pretty easily, and it works pretty much in every situation. There were some like harder combos that you could do, but they were spacing dependent and counter hit dependent and stuff that I just do not need to be worrying about right now. So this has been removed. It now just is part of more combo reps, right? Similarly, I have been watching good players. I expect that you should do that if you're trying to improve. And I've come up with new stuff, like a lot of times when I got a Stain hit, I was going into like Close Slash or 5k into 6H. Turns out you can do Close Slash into 2H, and that will bait bursts. and you would be staggered the amount of times that your opponent recognizes the Stain hit and immediately does some crazy option, right? They're like, oh, I blocked, time to YRC. Oh, I got hit, time to burst on the very first hit. And the thing is, since the Stain explodes, you can kind of just chill, right? You can hit 2k, you can wait a second. If they YRC, you get to block it and counter hit attack them, which is great. You get huge combos off of that. If they burst, you take their burst and you can just basically restart your combo again. So, yeah, this is Stain. And then the big thing. Here's one of the big things that I think has changed between, like, despite the fact that this hasn't gone up, this is so much better. We'll see. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. So, I don't think this is the Testament's win condition. I really don't. So, let's talk about Strike Throw from my basic 1200 experience of how it works. There is a third option here in your rock, paper, scissors that doesn't get talked about much. Patience. So, this is coming from Smash Brothers. This was kind of how it worked there as well. You can hit people that are moving around with strikes. If they're in shield, you can throw them. But sometimes they'll roll, right? And you can catch rolls by waiting for them to panic and roll. It's the same thing here with Strike Throw, right? You can catch them pushing buttons, or trying to backdash or jump out or whatever. If they're not trying to do anything, you can throw them. But both of those options, for example, lose to invincible reversals. But what doesn't is blocking. And I think this is where a lot of players start. They're like, okay, it's strike, throw, block, which isn't wrong. But this is kind of what your offense looks like, and you don't do this one very often because you really only do this when you're baiting out DPs. But it turns out the patience is better than that, even though you don't use it as often. If they don't DP, you still get to see what they do or don't do, right? So if they don't do anything, you throw out your buttons, you kind of wait there for a second, you shimmy, you just down back, whatever. They didn't do anything. You have been given the green light to chuck them, right? Let's say that they immediately push a button and they force you into block stun. Well, now you know that you can counter hit them. Let's say they immediately jump. Well, now you know that you can do lows and catch them in block stun while they're trying to jump, because when they're trying to jump, even if they're blocking, it'll count them as blocking high. Let's say they immediately backdash to get out of the situation. Well, now you know that you can do a move that baits backdashes, and you might have to lab out what that is, but you can figure it out and put it as part of your pressure, and now they'll get smoked, right? So even though they didn't DP, your patience just gave you a lot of powerful information that you can now use to make better decisions against your opponent when you do your strike throw. But at the end of the day, the reason why it's called strike throw is because these are your two main options, right? The patience tells you which of them you should be using, or occasionally blocks the DP that beats both of these. But the patience itself doesn't do damage, right? The patience doesn't necessarily even force your opponent to do something. That's what this option is for. And this option is highly committal, right? After block stun in this game, you are invincible to throws for like 5 frames, and everybody has at least a 5-frame button, which means if they mash on you, throw always loses. If it'll either catch you while you're trying to approach them, if you're far enough away, or it'll catch you in the middle of your throw. That's bad, right? In addition, throw loses to all of those other things. It can lose to backdash. If you overrun, you can catch them, but then that loses to mashing still, right? And a lot of times, you'll just throw where they aren't anymore, and then they get to hit you. And if they jump, they can hit you again. And those are counter hit starters, and then you get deleted. So this is a very committal option. I don't think the Testament needs to do that in order to force you to do something. I think that Testament has a better way of forcing options out of you. And that is Stain. So our basic mix-up is Strike Stain, because Stain still forces the opponent to do something, like throw. If they just sit there and block, and we put Stain on them, they're now at a huge disadvantage, right? We can high-low them with Arbiters or like 2K5D. We're going to be plus after most of those situations, which means they had to guess, and now they're still in our pressure at disadvantage after the guess. That's huge. This is great. Occasionally you can either like do normal into Crow and it'll frame trap, right? You can be plus sometimes. Like, you don't have to lose to them trying to jump out, or to them trying to backdash, or to them trying to mash when you use Stain. So striking is still good, right? You'll still catch them doing these things, but then you can turn Strike directly into Stain, right? By putting them into a mix-up situation, because Stain is a hit, so it's part of your Strike throw now. Or, sorry, it's part of your just Strike mix-ups now that beats a bunch of options. And now they're stained. Now, for the next 5 seconds, they have to do something, right? They can't let you pull up on them. And if they're in the corner, right, they can't let you just brutalize them like this. They have to pick an option to get out of this situation, because if they don't, they just get reset right back into this situation again. And now throw is still good, obviously, but it's now our third option. It can be the one we go to the least. It can be the one that we pick as a low use, high risk option. So this is great. I think that this is the correct way to play Testament from watching other players and just from my own experience. Stain forces people to do stuff, right? If you ever played Smash Brothers, this charge shot is a problem. If Samus is glowing, you have to play differently because you could explode at any second. Same thing here, right? You're the one who ate the bad anime food, and like your opponent is now the one with the bad anime food and animation on them. But it's the same idea. You have to play differently just because this exists. And because of that, you can basically run a much more powerful offensive strategy than I originally thought you could of Strike Throw. You can now basically play Strike Patience, and Throw is your final option, because Patience still forces options out of them. It's amazing. So that's the first big change to our game plan, is I don't think that my offense needs to be quite as committal as it was before. Defense has not changed, to be honest. We still suck at this so much that I'm actually just going to bring us back down. There we go, that's where we are. FD is a great indicator of when I realize I'm in trouble, because it pops up even if I'm not getting hit. So I'm just going to keep looking at this, reviewing it, figuring out how I'm doing from there. I'm bad at this, right? Like, I've got things where I don't realize I'm in trouble just because I'm not in the corner. I'm blocking high when I want to block low. I'm blocking... I'm jumping when I want to block high. There's problems here. We need to work on this. Heck, we might even need to legitimately just run into matches and block as long as we can without dying. That might be what we have to do. So, yeah, this doesn't change very much, other than the fact that I've, downgraded myself back to being bad at this. Yeah. I think that this doesn't need to change, and we just need more practice blocking, figuring out when we need to make guesses, when we can just FD out. Yeah, and we'll work on more stuff later, but that is good enough for now. And then this has made another big change here. I've made quite a bit of change to this one also. Play more to Stain RPS. What does that mean? Well, it turns out RPS is hard because it requires you to know risk-reward, right? Is this option really good? Is it bad? Like, how much of a benefit am I getting for clipping somebody with a really small button here versus trying to hit a bigger button? Is it worth dealing with how good their option that beats it is? And then, something happened to me after I started figuring that out. The situation that followed happened. And man, was that more important than I gave it credit for. Turns out that if you win an RPS situation and put yourself into a situation immediately afterwards where your opponent has like a 90-10 advantage on you, that's bad. So what are we doing here? So this part has really... this is going to stay here for the rest of my life. There's too many things involved in this. What character are they playing? Do they have any special abilities that I have to worry about? How close are we to the corner? Where's the meter situation? How much life do I have left? Do they have burst? Do I have burst? That's too much mental I can't do that right now. Right? That's too much to ask. So instead, we're still going to do the same thing, right? This game plan is make them, like, find a way to throw a fireball and then try to hit them with Stain, and if I do, then cool, we're in phase 2 of this 2-step plan, right? Because the first one is get... Oh, gee, that was not what we wanted. The first one is get Stain, right? That's our first goal in neutral, is get Stain. Then, once we've gotten it, we can work on there. So this gives me an easy window to figure out where I want to RPS, right? If they block a fireball, or I hit them with a fireball, and then I throw Stain at them, we see how they react, and it's an easy window for me to say, alright, every time I throw the crow, I'm going to see how they react, right? Unholy Diver is an RPS moment. Let's focus on that, because it's an important one. Then, once we have Stain, I have seen people react in 2 common ways. Either they go buck wild, with the understanding that if they hit me, then Stain goes away, and they can get pressure going on, and the world is good again. And they really want to force this, right? This is like where they are forcing interactions, forcing scrambles, making life just miserable for everyone. Because even if the hit they get is pretty non-committal, Stain goes away and their life is better. So that's good for them, but this favors us, because we can play neutral a very specific way. Again, this is 1200 brain speaking, but here's the basics of neutral. Pokes, beat, approaching, beats, whiff punishing, beats, pokes, right? So if they're gonna go buck wild, then what do? Well, we poke, and we fight for space. Right, we're going to fight for the space in front of us and poke, because here's the thing. If they get like a small hit, like a 2P or a 5K or something, you know, notwithstanding like Leo or characters that get their game plan off of 5K, but for the most part, if they hit us with a small poke here, something non-committal, they reset neutral and they lose Stain, which is really good. If we hit them with a poke here, they explode. Right? Right? They're dead. They're dead. So, even if it's a 50-50, the reward here is great. And anything that they want that's more than that, right? If they really go in hard, and some of them do, right? Like IAD forward, run up close slash instead of just trying to get a little poke off. That means that our game is going to be better than theirs, right? If they're picking big commitment options and we're not, that's the world we want to live in anyway. So, sorry. Did I flip that around? Regardless. If we're low commitment and they're high commitment, that's the world we want to live in. So that's fine for us. Right? And even if we block a poke, then what happens, right? We go back to neutral and they burn a little bit of Stain time, but Stain might still be on them. If we hit them with a move that gets blocked, we're probably plus, right? We can start our offense off of this now, and that's still really good for us, right? The situation after is still great, even though this situation is like a pure 50-50, because the reward from the situation that follows for us is incredible, and the reward that happens for them is pretty much where we were to begin with, right? Resetting the position, except they don't have Stain. Alright, cool. Or maybe they do even still have Stain if we just blocked it. We're still just playing neutral here. So, that's the first big thing I've seen. The other big option I have seen is they get really passive. Right? They are looking to beat our approach because they're like, you're going to approach now because in order to get anything off of Stain, you have to hit me with Stain. Without hitting me, Stain doesn't do anything. And there is some truth to that, but it turns out that if you are defensive and I just approach and back you to the corner, that's a pretty big win by itself, right? That is basically its own kind of stain, right? If you're stuck in the corner, that skews risk-reward to a similar extent, I would say, as stain does, right? So if they're going to play defensive, what can we do? We can approach. And Testament has one of the classically powerful approaches in the game. And this is going to be my go-to. Right? If you block slow fireball, Testament is plus 1 billion. And it doesn't set off stain, which is important. It's actually powerful for Testament because then you can run stain offense on them, right? You can just immediately skip to this step. It's great. You recognize that you're about to get a stain hit, and you start going into this. So blocking slow fireball is bad. So they don't want to do that, so what can we do? We can, again, throw our projectile, see what they want to do. So if they want to go in, then we'll find that out pretty quickly. If that's their answer to, oh man, I can't just sit here and try to poke the approach. And then if they do play that, then guess what? We can play the whiff punish game, right? We can force them into the corner. We can beat their pokes by just throwing the fireball and walking at the fireball and putting them in positions where not pushing buttons is really scary. Not trying to jump or get out of the corner or air dash back or whatever, we'll take it, right? If they air dash back, they give up space, we take it. If they go for the poke anyway, we leverage the fireball. If they try to whiff punish us, again, they're going to be backdashing, right? The one thing they're probably not going to be doing if they're defensive is approaching. So we don't have to worry about poking, right? So we can kind of like use the power of Fireball to eliminate some of the RPS, make it simpler for ourselves, which is the most powerful thing I think we can do right now. So here's how this works. If they go in, we're happy with that. We fight for space. If they don't go in, we force them to fight for their space, right? So we can boil as much of it as possible down to fighting for space, right? Because if they don't fight for space here, we either force them to the corner, which is basically getting a free stain back again, or we force them into this block situation. And this is where this is what they wanted to avoid in the first place, is getting pressured while stain was up. So this is my life. And then I have one last little thing that I wanted to put in here. And this has already gone a little longer than I wanted to, so I'll try to be quick about it. I backdash too much. So again, I'm going to blame this game for that, because we're finally hopping over to the game here. In Smash Brothers, there is no backdash. There is only forward dash in the other direction. And that's just as good as it sounds. I can, in Smash Brothers, cancel the dash into a button. I can cancel it into a block. I can cancel it very quickly. I can cancel it after a long amount of time. I can jump out of it. I can do whatever the heck I want to out of it, which is spectacular, right? So when somebody approaches me, doing this is really good, because it's actually doing this in the opposite direction. So you can whiff punish pretty easily with stuff like that. You can take up some of the space that you lost. You probably only lose about, like, if I dash backwards in this game, or if I air dash back, I have lost that space. That space is gone. Like, Geo is going to eat that up. In Smash Brothers, I could lose a little bit less space, right? I can choose how much space I give up. So I can give up less space. I can take back some of that space very quickly, right? There we go. That's how you have to do it in this game. So I can immediately decide, I'm going to take up half that space again, right? We start right here. I'm going to run forward, and I'm going to take up half that space again. I'm going to go back here. So if I'm wrong, I don't actually lose an entire backdash worth of space most of the time. I lose like half of a backdash worth of space. And I have way more options. Here, if I backdash, I can't push a button till it's over. I can't jump till it's over. I can't block till it's over. So it's way worse. It's way less consistent. And here was the problem I was running into. So I've got Geo set to do something fairly aggressive here, but I'm seeing it a lot at 1200 play. She's going to run up close slash. Alright, that starts her pressure. She's happy now. She's like +3 or something. I played this character before. She had a really big plus. She's like +2, +3, and now you're in trouble, right? Not a lot of trouble if you block it, but you're where she wants you to be. Here's the problem I had. When I was trying to get away from this, I would backdash. Here's what happens if you try to do that. Yeah, you get hit. Here's what happens if you're a little bit faster on it. Yeah, you still get hit. It auto-corrects the close slash into a far slash, and even though, like, let me see, does her far slash hit from here? No, it doesn't. So even though her far slash doesn't hit from that range, she still hits you anyway because it auto-corrects it to far slash. So she just wanted to do this. She wasn't even looking for this option, and now you're airborne off of a far slash, and that's like half your life, right? She's going to melt you like butter for that. So I backdash too much in pressure like that. When really, what's the answer? What's the answer? Let's find it. If they're going to approach, we're going to... Yep. Poke. So if we want to engage in RPS here, we can do that, right? We risk a little bit of reaction timing or whatever, but for the most part we can do that. We can buffer stuff behind it, right? So that way, if we do it too early, we still block. If we do it at the right time, we get the sweep. We can hit confirm off of that, so buffering is really strong there. And yeah, that puts us into our game plan, right? Oh, and even the trade didn't look too bad, right? She's probably a little advantaged because she's got a higher level button there. But we can also like press buttons that are a little bit longer, right? Like even that. Ooh, yeah. See, like, you know, depending upon how much we want to commit there, we can play RPS, and we can play either like small commitment, and then if we mess up, we're okay, or we can play like big commitment, or you know, medium commitment, or big commitment, and now we get like, she's dead, right? So, yeah, it's. This is what I need to practice doing. Or, here's the other thing. We can choose to not play RPS there. Right? It turns out that if you block, you don't take any damage. Well, okay, maybe using full meter Giovanna as the example was bad there, but you get the point. So, you know, we can also choose to not play RPS there, and that can be fine too. What if she tries to whiff punish us and she goes backwards afterwards, right? Because she can backdash really fast after that. Well, then she actually gives up that space. We can take that space up, either with buttons or by moving forward or by throwing, you know, whatever. With our succubus. I guess that's a button technically, but it's also like that space is my space now, right? You don't want to be there. That's another area on the screen that I now threaten. So I threatened this area, but I also threatened where she was for those, what, like 2 extra seconds now? That stays there forever. Look at how long I threatened this area. Like, I can play like a pretty nasty shimmy game with you where I am threatening a big area over here and also still the area where you are. So yeah, that looks good. So I need to not do this as much. This is what the game tells you, right? It's dangerous. We don't want to do that quite as much. Alright, so this has already gone well over the times I usually use for these, but I felt like this one was important, and I was excited about this one. This is like the turning point, I feel. So I'm probably going to pick a week of, because this takes time. The whole point of picking up a game plan that's going to work long term instead of just teleporting behind fools is it's going to take time. Time spent playing this game and using the direction that we have come up with here to come up with our, to figure out how our game plan is working. So that's what I'm going to do. We'll probably turn this into a week of something. It'll be interesting to have both of them going on at the same time, because the week of is still going to be part of starting from scratch, but we'll figure it out. And yeah, that's the next plan, and I hope to see you there.